This week, our feature interview is with Leonard Rose, who currently today is a principal security architect at a large provider and has quite the history in computer hacking, and we'll be on to talk about that and all things internet and Unix and security related. After that, we're going to do the stories for this week. We've got some WebEx vulnerabilities. I feel like I read stories this week and had deja vu from time. Like, I feel like Volkswagen has been hacked before, and I feel like medical devices have been vulnerable before. And there was one other one that just kind of, I was like, I think I've seen this before. So we'll have a lot of you think you've seen it before stories in our security news this week. So stay tuned for this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Welcome. Did Larry have an introduction? Hi, everyone. This is Paul Asador, and I guess I'm introducing...
Apparently, I no longer do. Wow, and I look short.
So, I accidentally landed in New England and stumbled my way to the G-Unit studio.
That's pretty much how I envisioned it happening, Jeff. Carlos, save the show, please.
Yes, somebody's got to do it.
Cannot be saved.
Well, it's good to have you back, Carlos. Jeff, welcome. Nice to have you in studio.
It's great to be here, Paul. Try to stay awake for the whole episode.
Yes. In studio, dropping his phone incessantly. Welcome, Jack.
What? Where? Oh, hey! I'm in the studio with you guys. That's kind of cool.
NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. In 2017, an increasing number of companies reported they did not have effective insider threat detection methods. Logarithm's UEBA solutions enable you to detect and neutralize user-based threats in real time, while built-in scenario and behavior-based analytics empower you to expose insider threats, compromised accounts, and privilege misuse. Visit logarithm.com to learn how their UEBA solutions can help you expand visibility and enhance detection capabilities.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man who makes the cars go woo-woo! Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's wonderful to be here this evening. We've got a fantastic show. We've got lots of co-hosts to introduce, which is great. So I will start with the illustrious Larry Pesce to my left.
Yeah.
What's going on, dude?
It's good stuff. Good stuff. A little fun in the studio here after the show last week with some of the production staff.
Yeah, John almost died. One of our production staff members.
Yeah.
I watched the recording and I was like, wow, he pretty much almost died.
Yeah.
So
it was awesome.
don't kill the staff here, please.
That was all of their own accord. It was completely voluntary.
On the lines via Skype, Jason Wood is with us. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Paul. Good to be back.
Joining us from the massage parlor, as usual.
Right.
Carlos Perez is here with us. Carlos, welcome.
Hey, Paul. Happy to be here.
Now, Carlos, you've recently had a change in your career that I believe you can talk about now.
Yes, I can talk about it now. I'm actually team lead for research at TrustedSec.
It's awesome.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Thank you.
I spoke with your boss today.
Everybody talks with my boss.
Right? That must be weird, right?
I don't, Carlos, I don't talk with your boss.
Oh, you should call Dave.
I know I should.
Call him more often, Larry.
No.
Come on now. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, every time I'm sitting in front of him in person, I think he's taking about 4 to 5 calls per hour. So
Yeah.
that's normal.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. So let's see. Going from left to right on my screen, not Kevin is here with us in front of the world's tallest window, in fact, for those that are wondering. And the world's largest mute button, apparently, as well.
Hello, I'm not
Windows
Kevin.
and mute buttons
It's lovely
are a
to
really
be here.
serious thing here.
Yeah,
Paul. Thanks
I
for
love
having me
you
again.
guys,
And I'm
everybody.
like,
You're so awesome.
Are you all right, Joff? You okay?
Yeah, no, Joff is providing bad lip reading service.
Okay. Thanks, Joff. So, not Kevin. Are you? Can you talk about where you work and what you do, or you prefer not to say? It's up to you.
That is true. I have also made a little bit of jump for those keeping score at home. I was previously at Pony Express, but I'm now with a new company called Barclay. I'm one of their senior security engineers here.
It's awesome. That's awesome.
So
I've gotten to know your company a little bit, the company you work for, not Kevin, and I like what I see, and I like the people there too. So
Well,
I can see why you chose that as a new home.
As the owner of
Especially
4 dogs,
likes the pet food.
It's not.
Sorry.
It's not pet food. It's definitely endpoint security. I'll use that as a blanket term. You can feel free to correct me, not Kevin. I would put it in the overarching category of endpoint security.
You're 100% correct, and many people have also made Larry's mistake of hitting us up for dog walking services. So that's always a fun email to answer.
That's awesome. Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us. Joff, welcome to the program.
That would be me. It is good to be back again. I've been around the world a few times in various places, but I'm here in the flesh, and my office keeps filling up with boxes. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I talked with your boss yesterday, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I never talk to him, so I count yourself lucky.
You know, when we talk and we do Enterprise Security Weekly. That's like the only time during the week we have a chance to chat. So, let's see. I would like to make an announcement. I guess I just did. But please visit our fine friends at itpro.tv, itpro.tv/Security Weekly. You can check out a really cool interview that Jeff Mann and I did with Adam Gordon from IT Pro TV on Enterprise Security Weekly on penetration testing. That was a lot of fun. And we're going to talk more about penetration testing because we just can't talk enough about pen testing. Not necessarily in the next interview, though. Who has joined us is Mr. Leonard Rose. Leonard is a fellow hacker and Unix geek who in 1991 was convicted of wire fraud. Once believed to be associated with the hacking group Legion of Doom, which he was not, and we'll expound upon that. Leonard then went on to become the founder of the Full Disclosure mailing list and holds a position today as a principal security architect. Leonard, welcome to the program.
Hi, Paul. Hey, gentlemen.
So, Leonard, how did you get your start in really technology and information security?
I just sort of absorbed it and helped become part of that group that created it all. I'm kind of a prototype hacker. Basically, I've been using Unix since about 1976. Wow. I had accounts on the ARPANET, the original ARPANET, with the lease line 56K serial network, the original one, and I had guest accounts on NASA servers at the time too, because there was a lot of really great people at NASA out at Ames that time, and they just sort of let me stay there as long as I promised not to do anything bad. So it was a great time to be around.
That's amazing. I do want to get to what you've seen change, especially in Unix and then Linux. Since then, I think using Unix as long as you have that's pretty awesome. That's pretty cool. Definitely want to tap into that. Tell us about, first of all, the events in 1991. Like, how did you get involved in writing articles for FRAC, and eventually led you to write that article in FRAC?
Oh, I knew Craig and I basically, he asked me to write an article, and I was just casting around for what to write. And I'd recently written some code. I was working as a consultant at the time for the Swiss Bank, and I'd recently written some code to collect logins and passwords that people were attempting to break into the bank systems using, coming in through the terminal servers. So. Mm-hmm. I took the same exact code and I wrote it, and I changed the comments in the C source to make it more, hackerish, more like, it was trendy hacker speak. And the next thing I know, anyway, I sent it to Craig for publishing in FRAC, and he deleted my original mail, and he asked me to resend it. So I sent another copy. And that's how I got 2 counts of wire fraud, because I sent email to FRAC publishers twice, over interstate lines because I was in Maryland and they were, of course, at the University of Columbia at Missouri University. So it was really stupid. And there was a lot of us who were using, at the time we were using AT&T 3B2 systems as our personal Unix machines. And so there was a clique of us, like Charlie Boykin at Killer at one of the original UUCP sites. And we just kind of it just sort of spread around the source code because, for Unix. And it became a major contention, of course, later with AT&T. And but this was the source that you could, if you were enrolled in like an electrical engineering course or a computer science course, that they would give you a full tape of the Unix source code. So they were giving it out in colleges. So I didn't really think it was that proprietary.
Right.
And so anyway, it was a 21 line excerpt of login.c, and that was the beginning of my saga as an enemy of the state.
So what happened?
God.
At the time, I mean, there was no like Google or anything, right? Like someone had identified that as source code and reported to AT&T. Is that what followed after the publication?
Well, no, I don't know. It was just they were already investigating something going on with Killer and Charlie Boykin and a bunch of others, basically the LOD kids. There were headlines in the Washington Post calling me the mastermind of the Legion of Doom, and I was not. They used to call me up late at night. At that time I used to work pretty late at night and box me in using their AppleCat modems that were running synthesizers that could let them box around. So they were boxing and and I had I guess it was about 30 Secret Service agents in my house in Maryland, and I remember that the image that sticks in my mind is these agents with machine guns pointing them at my wife and children in my living room, and then being thrown up against the wall with a 9mm in the back of my head, and all because I basically published an article. So
21 lines of
right
login.c.
Yeah.
And now
Steve
Leonard
Jackson Games, remember they were raided, so it was all part of Operation Sun Devil. Bruce Sterling, a well-known science fiction author, wrote a book called The Hacker Crackdown. It's in the public domain now, so you can read all about it. But even he didn't understand it because he ended up calling me like a wares dude, which really pissed me off at the time. But he wouldn't change his assessment, so I was labeled in the book as a wares dude.
And do you think that how did they potentially or accuse you of being linked to the Legion of Doom? Like, what was the connection there?
Well, it was because I published the article for Frack and Night Lightning, and these guys were part of the Legion of Doom. Mm-hmm. So, so that was my connection.
What was for those that are listening, Leonard, and may have heard about the Legion of Doom or maybe not, like, could you give us a description?
I don't really, I was ahead of all the groups. I wasn't part of any group. I wasn't a joiner. I had a full-time job working, all the time. So they were a group of kids, I guess. They were just, learning things and teaching themselves. And they happened to do a few interesting things here and there. And they were definitely, quite skilled and were learning quickly. So, they were great.
Leonard, who helped you during your time? I mean, obviously you were, talk about your home being raided and, eventual arrest. Who helped you the most throughout that process?
There was a huge effort actually on my behalf, and I owe so many people a debt of gratitude. That, for one, like John Perry Barlow, he was instrumental in helping me, and so was Mitch Kapoor, and John Gilmore. If Unix people will recognize his name, of course, and there was Woz and Jobs too. They contributed. So I had 6 attorneys at one point. They spent about $1 million on my defense, but one of my attorneys said that, actually the indictment began with 5 counts, and wasn't just writing an article for FRAC. I had written a brute force password cracking program, to dictionary attack against DES, encryption, and they compared that to burglary tools. So, and then when they seized all my equipment and my servers, the Secret Service agents taught themselves Unix using all my equipment, and they kept it for about a year or so.
Wow.
And so, but anyway, by the time I knew it had grown to a 15 count indictment, and it was like for everything from writing code to possessing code. It was like, they didn't, and one of my attorneys, she was a very nice lady. She told me in private, because the other team members would have probably thrown her off, but she said you really need to take a plea bargain, because one of the charges are going to stick, and each charge could get you in up to about 45 years. This was after Robert Morris. So anyway, to get to your original question, I'm the reason. My case was the reason why the Electronic Frontier Foundation was created, and I was swept up after Robert Morris, the worm, and I guess they were looking to make an example of us. And then I fought back in the press, which was a major mistake. And I was using words like brown shirts and Nazis and things like that, and they didn't like that. So they, I remember I had a cast up to my hip, and I hadn't been able to walk for a year. And I remember being carried in on a stretcher into the jail in Naperville, Illinois, because I had a contract at Bell Labs at the time, and they arrested me and brought me into jail, and they carried me into jail. It was pretty funny. So, but Mitch Kapoor and John Gilmer and John Perry Barlow, who God rest his soul, and he's dead now. And
so
those guys are great.
Did you were you able to use computers after your conviction? Like what happened shortly after that, before you went back to work?
One of the pressure points they put on me was they barred me from touching a computer under any circumstances, and so I was basically unable to earn any money during the time that it was pre-trial supervision. And so one of the conditions of the plea bargain was that they not place that restriction on me. So I was grateful for that. So I was able to work, with computers right away. And I think that after I moved to Silicon Valley, basically the probation officer was really nice, and he was kind of, the government had a lot of conditions for me, but I was only sentenced. Originally, they tried to get me sentenced for 1 year, which meant I would have had to spend every day in prison. And so we fought very hard to get an extra day. So I was sentenced to 1 year and a day, and I got out after 8.5 months. And then I was in a halfway house in Chicago, because that's where I was at the time that they enrolled me into the federal prisoner ranks. I'm a convicted felon now. So,
but
my life is different.
and despite that, you've had what I would term as a really awesome career. So, what was your first, foray back into having a career in computers?
Well, it was working for a company run by a guy named Norman Gillespie, who was right across from the Sun Building in Palo Alto, and I created the first internet to satellite uplink. I had Sun 4280s running with large serial boards and these big VME bus based original Sun 68K based Unix, the original Sun OS, the 4.x series. And so I basically was running Usenet over satellites. We had an uplink in Palo Alto where we were basically using modified fax modems, and it was part of Norman's paging system. And so we were distributing Usenet over satellite. I know that TBS tried to do it on a subcarrier, but we actually did it for real, and we did it with standalone modem systems and like 0.9 meter dishes. And it was really great. So it was running about 4,800 baud, and it was great. It was almost as good as a real internet connection. So that was my first gig after prison.
I want to turn over to the panel. I think I heard someone earlier wanting to pipe in with a question for Leonard at this juncture.
I didn't have
someone
one.
just coughing?
I'm just happened to be just in awe of one of the folks that really sort of made some of our industry happen, and some of the counterculture magazines and stuff that I've been reading for years. So I'm just just happy to have the opportunity to listen to the stories that maybe we wouldn't normally get to hear.
So Leonard, as we take a breath, I have to ask: is it VI or is it Emacs?
Oh, it's definitely VI.
Yes. I knew I liked you.
Emacs turned into an operating system.
There you go.
I'm sorry.
Look,
I'm old school, okay? I can even use ED.
I was thinking that your answer was going to be it's ED or it's SED, said, right? Because I don't remember. I forgot how many times I was in a situation where I had to use ED to actually rescue myself from a boot situation that had gone south. So,
right. And also trying to get the regex perfectly correct.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Now, I might argue the modern equivalent of that comment is latex or markdown.
Right.
Well, it's got to be latex, sorry.
Now, you mentioned that the FBI used your computers for them to run
Actually, it's
themselves.
the Secret Service.
Did they left anything on those computers?
Actually, it was the Secret Service. At the time, there was a turf war between the FBI and the Secret Service as to who would handle computer crime. So I was in the middle of their tug of war. The question was, did they leave anything on the systems? Actually, they did, because I had legitimate licenses for my operating systems and everything. And they didn't give me back any of the source code that they'd seized from me. I had source code for SunOS, and I had source code for every variant of AT&T System 5, like 2.x to 3. Actually to 3.9 or so. And source code for such elite things as Honeydammer UDCP, which Peter Honeyman is a friend of mine. So. I don't know. A lot of it was ripped off. A lot of stuff was missing, and I really didn't care, because by the time I got it back, it was obsolete, and I was already using something better. So, but they, I don't want to say the gentleman's name, because he was like the lead agent that time that they raided me, and I remember, being. You know how the scene from The Matrix where Agent Smith is being interrogated in that room?
Mm-hmm. How can you talk if you don't have any mouth?
Exactly. So it was just like that. Only they didn't morph into virtual reality characters. I remember they sought to handcuff somebody in that room because they had. I remember I was trying to help a friend who was possibly swept up in this, and it turned out that he was like the informer. Oh, so I went to a phone booth just after the next day after they raided me. I went to a phone booth to try to warn him, and they had the whole thing recorded, and so they invited me down to surrender my passport, and then in that room they slapped the cuffs on me and threw me in the jail cell in the courthouse where the Secret Service hangs out. But it was an interesting time, and I got through it thanks to the EFF, and I really believe that those folks saved my life. So,
and later in your career, Leonard, where are some of the areas you focused? And I think surprisingly, some of those weren't security related.
Actually, right. I never had a real security role, I think, until 2013. I just been doing systems engineering, and I had a lot of titles like VP of R&D and director of this and that, and lofty titles during the .com era, and but basically that just meant that was just another hat that I had besides sweeping up the floors. I like to build things that didn't exist before, so I'm really good at creating infrastructure that just out of nothing. So. And so I've been working with Unix and networking and internet networking and routing and just about everything I could, including kernel hacking, which I do a lot of hardware development and a lot of embedded work too. So I'm kind of an engineer. So I just didn't really feel after what happened to me that I should even work in a security role. But and I know if you're good with Unix, you're automatically a good security person.
It's true.
So
It's true.
So I all my fellow Unix people, whether it's Linux or Unix or FreeBSD, I don't care what variant because I love them all. And I think that you're automatically very good with internet networking, and you're also very good at interoperating with other operating systems, and you understand, what packets are doing. If it's if it's TCP, you could probably name most of the the communication phases of a TCP connection, that sort of thing. And you could also write in Perl or awk or sed or Python, hopefully now, because Python's all the rage. And so it's just a matter of like anyone who's good with Unix, I would automatically hire as a security person.
Mm.
And if they actually weren't good with Unix, then you'd find out quickly.
Right. Oh, yeah. So, Leonard, what advice do you have for those that want to get into information security today? How should they learn? Where should they learn?
Well, basically, you should just grab up as much hardware as you can get, and load every operating system and study it closely, and understand. Set up little laboratories. Just teach yourself basically, and whenever you're stuck, just go ask for help from somebody who knows more than you. And obviously with the net, that's the whole world. So we all do that, and so I've been working in ISPs most of my life. Actually, I worked for Barnet, which is one of the original 5 National Science Foundation providers in the world, and so, we were bought by BBN. So unlike Al Gore, I can actually say I helped, build the internet. Because I did. At Barnet, I worked with some really great people. Where I work now, it's almost as good. But back to Barnet, like Vince Fuller, who basically invented cider. And Kathy, she's divorced now, so she doesn't like to use her original name. But at the time, Kathy Whitbrought, and there were a few people. This was back when they commercialized the National Science Foundation Network, and then so all the regional providers like NearNet. You're from Rhode Island, so probably you recognize the old acronym NearNet.
I do.
BBN bought up all those guys, and Barnet, and let's see who else they bought. They bought one in the Mid-Atlantic that was out of University of Maryland. I just can't remember the name. But we sort of they glommed us together, and we became like one of the first commercial providers. And so after that, I was like. I worked for the original version of Facebook. I worked for theglobe.com. We had co-CEOs, and they wore leather pants and danced on tables in Manhattan. And that's where the 20 million went, I swear. Actually, it was more like 100 million by the time we closed shop. But I was the last one standing. I moved all their sites and servers into my basement. I had a fiber optic connection in New Jersey, and I ran them out of my basement for a couple of years, and what was left of theglobe.com, which was quite an amazing story. But almost beat Skype to market in a company called VoiceGlow. Their last 2 job titles were chief scientist, but
What did you do as a chief scientist, Leonard?
I designed a lot of really big, large-scale infrastructure that could handle, terabits of activity, and I also helped, build all the Unix servers. I was the one that loaded all the operating systems, and I had back then, everybody had lofty titles, but the company had just gone public, and they had 100 million, and I never saw money disappear so fast in my life, actually. It was amazing. So I worked from home, and I came in once a week for staff meetings, and it was a trip. I think everybody in the room made, more than I did, and I was making close to $200K.
Wow.
That was in 1999, though.
Wow.
Yeah, so you know where the money went now. Salary.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of great people, but yeah, you're right. It did go.
So Leonard, of all the things that you've built, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that would be my current gig. I've taken a large, company with 28,000 to 30K servers, and changed their security stance from reactive to proactive. I'm the one that actually coined the phrase "secure by default," and several years ago, and I've been working at a campaign at my company. That's everything I do. I always end the document or whatever by pointing out that this will further our goal of being secure by default. And so I've cleaned up a company that didn't. I shouldn't really say that they didn't care about security, but they weren't, doing it as good a job as they could have. And so I feel very proud of that. And even though I'm not the security lead at the company anymore, I still feel that I've contributed.
Leonard,
That's awesome.
What in your role today? What tools and techniques or even processes help you the most in what is a very challenging job of securing the infrastructure that you're responsible for today?
Imagine, 30,000 network devices, really, really massive equipment, and then basically 28 to 30,000 servers behind that. So it's been quite incredible. I'm really proud of something I'm doing, and it's an ongoing work here, is implementing OSSEC on every single server, and the OSSEC agent. OSSEC is really great, and the active response capabilities allow me to basically write rules that can almost handle any situation, and it lets me. Basically, I'm getting to the point now where if you play with my network, 30,000 computers are going to hit you with a 256K ICMP packet. And it's so fun to control so many computers. And I've always had this fantasy, the geek fantasy, of installing OpenMPI on like 30,000 computers. That would be my ultimate thing. But I can do that with OSSEC because it's just as good. You write a script to basically execute an active response event, and any because OSSEC agent runs as root, you can do anything from the machine that you're using as your robotic endpoint. And so we have our own backbone. My company is really unique in the CDN business, and I guess if you don't mind, I'm going to plug my company
Sure,
a bit.
that's fine.
We're kicking Akamai's ass, okay? And we're the best in the CDN business, and so the technical staff that I work with are among some of the best that I've ever worked with, and I've been in this business since at least professionally at least since the late 70s. So I just know that it's a great group of people. So that would be my fun fantasy. And the hackback rules that the government's passing, if you hack my network, I get to mess you up. So I like that. But I'm very concerned about what's going on in the net today, though. I'm very worried because ever since ICANN, and IANA transitioned, things are kind of getting weird because we might lose the entire WHOIS network or infrastructure in the internet because of the EU's GDPR, and that's really concerning me because I rely on WHOIS, not just as a security person, but as an internet service provider. We need WHOIS because we are routing people, our network engineering team use it daily, and so I just don't know, if the EU needs to come to an agreement, because if we lose the ability to look up things at RIPE, for instance, and the registrars for the various TLDs in the EU and the EU itself, of course, that would be a disaster. And so that's my current
Leonard,
rant about this.
Do you think in the search for increased privacy that we as a society as a whole haven't really considered what some of the negative effects of that are? And I think that the developments of certainly the Tor and blockchain have fed into that as well.
Tor, don't get me started. It's a Trojan horse. Okay, just don't use it. It's fine if you're working for the their team, but if you're not working for their team, don't use it. And I'm going to say their team because I'm sure it's really good to our intelligence organizations. But I just I'm an enemy of the state, and I really am. I'm still undergoing a lot of trouble from what happened, and I'll never be clear of it. And so I just know that from what I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, I just know that there's really little hope for this republic, and the Bill of Rights has been destroyed, and all we have to do is, we just have to stand up, and all it takes for evil to exist is for the one good person to do nothing, and so we all have to basically try to help restore the Bill of Rights. I didn't mean to go into that, but
no, that's okay, Leonard. So
here.
I'm a libertarian now.
So Leonard, what other suggestions did you have? We were speaking about this, pre-interview about usage of the internet, and certainly we've received some feedback and talked about how while there is a concern about the government, having control or not over the internet or what we publish, of course, but also the larger internet providers, or some of what scare me more, Google, Facebook, Twitter, in being the main large mechanisms to send messages out to the world, that they have somewhat of a say as to what content can be published and what can't.
It's terrible. They've exercised far too much control over people. I remember somebody being like a computer scientist. Somehow he was a mathematician. Somehow was basically they shut down his sites, and they never really could figure out what it was because it was all just formula. And it took him a long time to get Google to restore his access.
Yep.
And he lost his entire existence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I can't help but recommend against using Google. Our company switched to Google, and I'm not very happy about it. But I can understand the need to outsource a large NASDAQ listed company's services. Sometimes our IT people, we have quite a few, and they're and they don't have to deal with the day-to-day support issues as they used to. So I can see the efficiencies of scale, but I wanted to talk about, you brought up the issue, I spoke about it earlier today when we were talking, and I'm very concerned about the militarization of the internet. Mm-hmm. I don't see anyone speaking about this, but when do we allow them to use the internet as a battleground? The internet, there should be an international body with actual ability to enforce things. Like, we're going to remove you from the root if your country attacks another country through the net. I don't care if it's China, if it's Russia, if it's Israel, or if it's the United States. Get your military nonsense off the net, because you don't have a right to destroy a country's access to the internet, because people depend on that information. When we were building the internet, the last thing in our mind was that the military would be able to control the internet. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if they consider it a resource that pertains to our national security, because if no one misused the internet for this purpose, then we wouldn't have trouble, and you wouldn't need to defend the internet. And they already had Milnet and the equivalent around the world. All the military governments have military organizations have their own private secure networks. It's like, I'm sorry, but I feel very strongly about this, because if I can't get to a server that might be in the Crimea, because they've shut down the country's internet, I don't think they should be allowed to do that. And if they're latecomers anyway, okay? Just because they funded, ARPANET doesn't mean that they own it. And we've gone so far beyond the ARPANET anyway, because it was very, very crude, and it wasn't really meant for what we're doing with the net today. I mean, we weren't supposed to be transferring video and all this binary stuff. It was really, we were very against binary stuff. So it's just a matter of time. But that's my concern today, is really the militarization of the net. And and I think that we all need to take action, no matter where we are around the world. If you believe in the internet, the internet becoming the future, which it has become the future as far as I'm concerned, and younger people today are probably still, thinking of an even, more, incredible uses of the net than we did. And
Leonard, I have a question about open source. Specifically having been around a lot of closed source systems, a lot of open source systems. How have you seen open source change, over time from the late 70s on to today? And you're probably as shocked as I am and others are that, oh my God, like Microsoft's running Linux in their cloud and people are talking about open source like it's a thing, right?
That was Steve Ballmer, right? That was Steve Ballmer.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Linux evangelist now. God bless him. He should have done that 20 years ago.
Yeah. So how have you seen open source change, over the past, 30 plus years?
I think it's truly incredible. I think that we've gone from 30 or 40 line things posted to Usenet and in ASCII text to GitHub and all the Docker and all the other technologies that people are using for building blocks to create just incredible, infrastructure. And I think that the open source community, it's everything we dreamed of. And we have a lot of, we have to owe, we owe Linus a lot of credit, for this. But it wasn't just Linus, Does anybody remember Minix?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's Andy Tannenbaum is the real person we should thank, more than just, and he got it started. And I'm sure Linus, I'm not sure. I don't really follow Linus. I'm not into the cult worship thing, but I do know that I think that Andy Tannenbaum deserves a lot of credit. And but back to the central point of your question. I mean, look at the projects that we have available, not just including the different variants of Linux and FreeBSD and BSD, but like OpenBSD and I really like OpenBSD. But I think Theo's a little bit out there for me though. But I know a lot of these guys, and I think that I'm very very happy that. It's branched into, I worked in an early mail program called Elm, and it's a very old, the mail client, and I just worked a little bit on it and just helped out a little bit. So I understand what the team concept does in open source, but the organizations that exist today, just so incredible. We never expected that it would grow to my companies. We sponsor a lot of open source projects, especially FreeBSD, because we use a great deal of FreeBSD, and we have FreeBSD kernel hackers on staff who basically have written a wildly customized version of FreeBSD to improve our CDN performance, and so that we do. I think we sponsor Zabbix, because we use a lot of their infrastructure, and we also use a great deal more, on that sort of thing. But those are just two that I recall. And
that's the nice part of the BSD licenses. It allows you the flexibility to do that.
Exactly. And Darren Reed's original license, I liked it, but it was good enough for BSD anyway. But Linux, I really love Linux now. I was an anti-Linux person. I was so snobby. If it wasn't descended from the one true source tree, I wasn't having it. And you know what? I learned my lesson, and I love Linux, and I will use Linux. I have about 75 computers here in front of you, and every one of them except one virtual image is running Linux, and the one virtual image is FreeBSD, but that's only because I was auditing it today. But I wake up every day really eager to get going. I really like my work, and I'm my definition of a hacker wasn't the one that the media turned it into. It was somebody who was proficient and who was able to create something from nothing, and the old school hacker. And so, but they also called me the other hacker, and back then we had a lot of ethics. There were certain things we wouldn't do, and one was actually make money from what we did.
Right.
And I did a lot of things before the first computer laws were passed. And after that, I really didn't do anything except write a stupid article.
Right.
And then, I had all that source, and I wasn't doing anything wrong with it. I was studying the kernel because that was the only documentation there was the source.
We're so spoiled now, Leonard, with Stack Overflow, right? And back in the day, we didn't have those resources.
It's true because I admit that I search the net like anyone else, and I've learned a great deal of things that I had forgotten. Mm-hmm. And it's just I'm teasing, but I really use it a lot, and I'm really grateful. The only thing that for a while I tried to keep my Wikipedia page accurate, but I must have a lot of people that really hate me because they write a lot of vicious things about me and my Wikipedia page. So, but I just I just can't thank all the people who helped me, especially the guy who ran the Computer Underground Digest. His name is Jim Thomas. He was a professor at one of the Illinois schools. I can't remember it specifically now, but and he kept them. When I was in prison, he was probably the reason why they sent me. I was getting a lot of books to read, so I'm really grateful for the people who sent me the books, and hopefully some of the people that did send me those books will watch your program, and then they'll know that I really did appreciate them. But that was so long ago. It's But you said in '91, right? That it happened, but actually it happened in 1989, and they kind of kept me, under their thumb. But we fought too and tried to win, but I was advised to take a plea bargain secretly by somebody who was on the team, and that wasn't that's not what Mitch Kapoor and the rest of the EFF wanted. But
Leonard, do you look back on early in your career and look at some of the things that were happening with the internet, and now look back at them and kind of chuckle as to how much stuff has changed?
Yeah, like Gopher.
Yeah.
Right, guys? Gopher.
I mean, why do we need the World Wide Web? Because everything was on Gopher. Jeez.
Well, it was.
I'm not wrong.
No, it's funny though. But yeah, I just
Go for rock.
The internet has become more than I ever thought it would, and it's become much less than I ever thought it would, because I don't like the idea that of spam. I'm very anti-spam, and I just I had to outsource my mail because of the spam, and I just don't want to have to deal with getting the latest signatures and the antivirus stuff and all that. But I really don't have anything that's susceptible to viruses except for the laptop that we're doing the Skype interview with, and I have a VMware image of Windows 7 on one of my screens over here, and but I have virus protection. But the best protection is to I have IP tables rules to block all access from that Windows 7 instance to the net, and so everything's fine. It's all under control, and I'll probably be running Windows 7 for the next 20 years. Because Windows 8, we all know about Windows 8, 10, and whatever. It's just it helps us. So there's nothing. Linux has actually saved all of us from Microsoft, and we have to give Linux that because.
Did you ever think Did you ever think you'd see a day, Leonard, where Linux was inside of Windows today?
Oh, that's terrible. You never want to run VMware that way. You want to run Windows under Linux, not Linux under Windows VMware, because Windows VMware is really scary.
Well, now today
not
you don't even.
I would ever use it. But,
you don't even need VMware. You're right. Yeah.
I run DOS still. I have a bunch of DOS instances on old laptops that I program radios with.
Yes.
I'm a ham radio person too.
Oh, there you go, Larry. Yeah, Larry was telling us similar stories.
Yeah, DEKB1TNF.
Yeah, I don't. I let my license lapse because I don't believe in licensing the airwaves anymore. But it was a W3 prefix because I was from Maryland. So.
Yep.
So I just wanted to let you know. But I had my general class at age 13, and I got my DX100 at age 14. And so I was into 10 meters, really, because during the 70s, the sun was really cooperative.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
So I'm just a geek. I'm sorry. My toys when I was a kid was basically I would disassemble radios and TVs to try to salvage all the parts, and so
To build more radios.
Exactly, or power supplies, because I was always needing power supplies.
Sounds just like you, Larry. Yeah.
So this is a 66 node parallel cluster that I built originally just to crack passwords. It's running MPI. It's not OpenMPI. It's MPI CH2, and but something evolved in later after 2013 was I started using it as a model for network attacks. So I can simulate pretty interesting network attacks just right here with 66 little ARM computers, and they can each generate about 100 megabits. So
nice.
It's pretty respectable traffic.
And it looks awesome too.
Yes.
Well, it used to be all wireless. I had Wi-Fi dongles in each one, but the congestion and the fact that consumer home quality access points just couldn't handle the packet count. And
Yep.
It would even crash even DDWRT. So I eventually, and plus I must have I had a death wish because I must have created like the worst RF killer machine in the world, because there were 66 little Wi-Fi dongles, all blasting 2.4 gigahertz.
Yep.
Right, so it's like So anyway, but I got tired of the crappy performance, so I moved it back to a wired design, and as you can see, it turned into quite the spaghetti. But
it looks awesome.
It looks more impressive. I think it probably looks more impressive with the cables.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, performance is really great. There's like when you're running stress tests, like calculating pi through a parallel cluster. It's really the latency is really a factor, and because now there's no latency, it's really performing well. But the problem is it's pointless because these are 1 gigahertz ARM CPUs,
right?
ARM v7L, so they don't have a lot of crunching power. But these are 4 GPUs, and that's about 1,300 gigaflops right there. And so that's my next version of the cluster, and I'll be using it to crack passwords, mainly because there's only 4 nodes. But I'll still keep this thing around because if I want to simulate like a DNS attack, I'd like to plug a project that I have nothing to do with. But you know what? Go look for DNS dist, because I'm going to be designing a major infrastructure change somewhere based around DNS dist, and it's such an amazing DNS server that's also a DNS firewall, and it has a lot of automatic actions that immediately save your infrastructure, your DNS infrastructure. If you put this in front of your pools of real name servers running perhaps bind. DNS dist is produced by the same team that made pDNS. Mm-hmm. You should really get into that, because especially if you have large scale infrastructure or you need to protect critical name servers, don't buy this stupid DNS firewalls that you can buy as part of these appliances, unless they're advertised on this program, of course.
Thank you, Leonard. I don't think there is one, but thank you though.
No, I have to remember that. So I didn't want to slam something that shouldn't be, but I just want to know you really should use DNS dist, even if you just have a small DNS infrastructure, because it's such a great cache. It's amazing. It devotes the entire server's memory to the cache, and you can set up pools and you can divert traffic just based on the queries. If you have an abusive query, it can filter based on rules, patterns, and as long as you can establish a pattern, you can really make great use of it. And I have about 200 or 300 name servers. I'm going to put this in front of, and it's awesome. I don't mind talking about it because I don't care if somebody knows I'm running DNS dist. If you want to leverage that against me, then bring it on. I'm not challenging anybody though, because I would never do that. Really, I want to be known as quite humble but I've kept a very incognito life after prison.
Yeah, we had to kind of dig to find you, Leonard.
I'm not a scene horror. I don't attend on the conventions. Although you can ask Dark Tangent this. I was supposed to be the first keynote speaker for their first DEF CON. And my probation officer wouldn't let me. So I was living in Menlo Park, just outside of Stanford then, and the government didn't want me to speak, and they were trying to shut me up, but all the stuff that happened to me, it's really mostly it's helped my career. It really has, because I've had some really great positions in life. I work for some really great companies, and I don't know if I would have been able to do that if I hadn't gone through what I did before. But I do know that look at I'm like a year away from being 60 now, and I didn't start out to do anything that I'm doing now, and actually I'd rather be a stonemason right now.
Some days I'm right there with you, Leonard. Leonard,
I wanted to mention one last thing. I
Sure.
have an observatory that I built in New Mexico. It's about 100 miles from where I'm at right now, but just look it up on the net. It's called Top of the World Observatory, and I have a real huge dome and a big scope and all that. But that's why I moved from after 9/11. I was right across the street from the North Tower. I had just left the Millennium Hilton, and I was walking around the corner to Starbucks, which was right around the corner, at the Hilton. And after I got my coffee, I looked up, and pieces of rock were coming down. So I was there that day. I took my own pictures, and so I'm not going to get into what happened that day because that's not a topic for here, but.
Leonard, I think we could listen to you talk about, tell stories and talk about technology for like hours. I can see the expressions on our co-host faces, and they're just like enthralled and engaged with everything that you're saying. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I enjoyed it so much. Yeah, I would love to have you back. I know you don't like going to some of the conferences, but if you do, I can guarantee we'll welcome you with open arms and. Just listen, as we did tonight.
No, I don't want to waste anyone else's time.
No, certainly not. So, Leonard, I just have 5 silly questions to ask you. There's no right or wrong answer. So, the first question is 3 words to describe yourself.
I can use I guess I can use one word. I'm a hacker.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
If I was a serial killer, I could never kill anyone.
I believe that, actually. After speaking with you, Leonard, that is the most genuine answer I've heard for that question, I think, in some time. If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I'm sorry, that broke up?
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Hacker.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Oh, this is like the Kobayashi Maru.
Well, given some of the other two answers, I mean,
change everything. I don't want to be in either of those positions.
That's good. That is an acceptable answer. Yes.
It's cheating. I know it's cheating.
No, that's Kobayashi Maru. There's no cheating.
Leonard, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Oh man, Charlton Heston and Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, nice.
From a more civilized age.
Leonard, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly. It was wonderful having you this evening. Thank you for sharing.
Nice to meet you, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Leonard. With that,
Thanks, Leonard.
We're going to take a short break and come back with the security
Good
news,
night,
so
guys.
stay tuned. Thanks, Leonard.